Whether you were there for their first run or fell in love in syndication, did you know that some of the classic American sitcoms have had their place in pop culture solidified by having an animated incarnation? That's right, some of our favorite shows have been cartoons. So stay tuned for the top 10 cartoons based on your favorite sitcoms. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Victor, your host for PopCon. A salute to all pop culture, but mostly the 80s. PopCon runs the gamut. It doesn't just stay in the 80s, it's all the decades, all pop culture. I bet you don't know half of the entries on today's list, but so many of our classic and favorite TV sitcoms from the 60s forward actually tried their hand at a cartoon counterpart. So if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. Press that subscribe button, help me out. And also like, comment, share while you're there as well. Give me some love, give me some support, and we'll bring you some wonderful content, I guarantee. Now let's just get right into this list and see some of your favorite shows and their animated doppelgangers. Number 10, Mush, or M-U-S-H. Mangy, unwanted, shabby heroes. Obviously not a direct remake, but more of a parody of the famous 11-season run of MASH, Mobile Armored Surgical Hospital. Of course, this didn't happen in the Korean War, and unlike so many others on the list, the actual characters were all replaced with a canine corps of characters, but with very similar names like Bullseye, Trapper Yo, Colonel Flake, Sonar, Cold Lips, and Major Hank Sideburns. Yep, this 6-minute cartoon, which ran in a bundle of others in a show called Uncle Croc's Block, with Uncle Croc being played by Charles Nelson Riley, was not looked at very highly by the executives at the network nor the viewing audience. I think that the producers made it so it was funny to them, but nobody else. The show was shortened and eventually axed, and Filmation, the creators of the cartoon, said they never made another show for ABC. Number 9, my favorite Martians, with an S. Many of us remember the black and white sitcom starring Bill Bixby as Tim and his Uncle Martin, the Martian with magical hijinks. In this 1973 animated remake of the series, a lot of the same characters as well as additional characters joined the fun, and it truly lived up to its live-action counterpart. Unfortunately, this one-season cartoon didn't have any of the returning actors do their voices and was short-lived and is often lost to time. Number 8, Partridge Family, 2200 AD. You heard that right. What originally was planned as a Jetsons reboot by Hanna-Barbera quickly came to become the Partridge Family in the future. So the executive producers had already used the Partridge Family in animated form in another Hanna-Barbera cartoon called Goober and the Ghost Chasers, and so they decided to take the family and put them in their own animated send-off. Now, complete with, as was the case at the time, a sidekick, a robot dog named Orbit. Funny thing is about when the Jetsons finally were rebooted, Orbit became the alien sidekick for Elroy. Danny Bonaducci did reprise the role with his voice for his character, but even David Cassidy didn't return for the singing role of Keith. Music couldn't save this cartoon series, and this one-hit wonder lasted 16 episodes. Number 7, The New Adventures of Gilligan's Island. A lot of people would argue that the original 3 seasons of Gilligan's Island was basically a cartoon, so it lent itself very well to its animated counterpart. Less than 10 years after the show's original run, the hijinks of the 7 castaways continued in animated form, complete with what was required viewing at the time, a cute little animal sidekick, Snubby the monkey. Season 2 seemed to jump the shark by blasting them into outer space. The new name of the show, Gilligan's Planet, started when the professor was able to build a rocket ship out of things around the island, which is funny since he never could build a suitable raft to get off. The second season continued the hijinks on an uncharted planet. Unfortunately, Snubby the monkey didn't make it, but they had to continue the sidekick game with Bumper the alien. Those 2 seasons were it, and they never got saved. Number 6, The Addams Family. We're talking about the 1973 animated version and not the 90s. The Addams Family have lived in pop culture for decades now, and they will continue to do so. And what started as a one-panel printed cartoon in The New Yorker lent itself very well to an animated cartoon series. Now, the cast of characters had appeared in the new Scooby-Doo movies before, and they seemed ripe to make their own series. There was a few changes to, of course, what we saw in the live action version of the show, but not enough to be distracting. Great little tidbit here, young Pugsley was voiced by Jodie Foster. This successful family would have tons of incarnations in the future. But as for the animated cartoon, one season was enough. Number 5, Fonz and the Happy Days Gang. From 1980 through 1982, Fonzie and other members of the Happy Days gang joined Cupcake, a girl from the future, in her time-traveling adventures. As with other cartoons of this era and this kind, Fonzie was joined by Mr. Cool, his pet dog and sidekick. This show was popular enough for 2 seasons and even lived on, with Fonzie and Mr. Cool joining the ranks of our next cartoon on the list, number 4, Laverne and Shirley, or Laverne and Shirley in the Army, or Laverne and Shirley with the Fonz. Number 4 took the live-action sitcom Laverne and Shirley and took our women of the Schatz Brewery, put them in the Army, based on a 2-part episode of their live-action sitcom. This series continued the adventures with the 2 girls in the Army, and in the second season even brought the Fonz from his cartoon, working in the motor pool on the Army base with his dog, Mr. Cool. When Cindy Williams left the live-action sitcom, they also replaced the voice of Cindy Williams, who was voicing her animated counterpart at the same time. As Laverne and Shirley was a spin-off of Happy Days, it made sense to have the relationship between these 2 characters, as with the relationship of our number 3 cartoon on the list. Number 3 is Mork and Mindy. Nanu Nanu, another spin-off of Happy Days. Yeah, you got that right. Mork and Mindy was a spin-off of Happy Days. And our favorite alien from Boulder, Colorado, and his friends joined the cartoon ranks in 1982. Since the sitcom had ended a year earlier, both Pam Dauber and Robin Williams were both available to reprise their roles in voice acting. And Frank Welker, who never needed to get a job, voiced the alien sidekick of Robin Williams, Mork, Doing. Well, there was only 1 season, which is probably all we could handle, but they were grouped together with Laverne and Shirley and Fonz and the Happy Days gang to kind of make a spin-off block of cartoons for the era. Number 2, The Brady Kids. During the 4th season of the sitcom, Filmation was producing an animated version of it starring all 6 of the children from the show. With no adult supervision in sight, they gallivanted the globe with not just one, but a zoo of animal sidekicks like the Mynah Bird Marlin, Mop Top the dog, and Ping and Pong the Pandas. Yes, you heard that right. Ping and Pong the Pandas. There was a second season, actually, of only 5 episodes, thank God. And even with some threatening of breach of contract, Barry Williams, Christopher Knight, and Maureen McCormick refused to come back and voice the characters that were then voiced by Filmation usuals. Before I get to number 1, I thought I'd bring up a few honorable mentions. These guys may not have made the top 10, but they're worthy of note. Some are sitcoms, some are dramas. Either way, these are live-action shows from our past that actually made an effort in the animated world. That Girl in Wonderland. That girl in the title, it's Marlo Thomas. That Girl, the sitcom, went all fantasy in this Alice Through the Looking Glass rendition. Jeannie. This is based on I Dream of Jeannie, but with such little evidence of its connection to the original sitcom, it is too loosely based on the original to make the cut. But we did get Mark Hamill in one of his earliest voiceovers. Emergency +4. Not a sitcom, but such a shock to go animated, the Universal Studios hour-long hospital drama Emergency was turned animated in 1973 to 1974. The +4 stood for the 4 young people in training that appeared in every episode. To appeal to kids, those characters were added, as well as some strange other animal characters that was the pattern of the area, but seemed to mimic the Brady Kids. A Mynah Bird, a dog, and a monkey also joined the cast. The voices of Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto reprised their roles. Star Trek the Animated Series. We could not have this list without mentioning Star Trek the Animated Series. Meant to continue the 5-year mission of the original series, which only ran until 1969, this cartoon, in both 1973 and 1974 by Filmation, is mostly considered canon in Star Trek lore. Punky Brewster. As cartoons as toy commercials began to wane in the late 80s, shows like this and others would pop up again to try their hand at extending the life of popular sitcoms of the era. Punky Brewster started it all with a true spin-off of live-action version in 1985 and 86, complete with a cute supernatural sidekick, Glomer. Alf. From 1987 to 1989, the cartoon landscape was perfect for Alf. Animation could no longer be 30-minute commercials for the greatest toy lines ever to exist, so these adventures on Alf's home planet, Melmac, took us away from the Tanner household and told new stories in a prequel series. Little Rosie. Finally, this little gem. It was the end of the 80s, and Roseanne tried one last effort to translate a sitcom to animation in 1990. But giving herself the Muppet Babies treatment and depicting herself as a child with some of her siblings, there were only 18 episodes made by Nelvana, with the last 2 never airing. Number 1, The Dukes. This 1982 Hanna-Barbera cartoon ran for 2 seasons. Incredibly, it ran concurrent with the live-action show on the very same channel. And with that came the voices of the current cast. That means that during season 1 of the cartoon, while Bo and Luke actors were out of the show over royalty disputes, cousins Vance and Coy were the stars of both the live action and the cartoon. When season 2 hit and Bo and Luke were back on the Dukes of Hazzard, the animation changed as well, and so did the intro to explain the change of the characters. If Flash, the sheriff's dog, wasn't enough, Uncle Jesse had to have his own foil for the dog in Smokey the Raccoon. Frank Welker, who is behind many of these animal voices we've talked about, voiced Smokey, Flash, as well as the General Lee. Yes, the General Lee had a speaking part, not sure what things that the General Lee might say, but you can only imagine. The nonsensical Cannonball Run type premise of the show, where they drove around the world to save the Duke's farm, made little sense. But it was a cartoon of the Dukes of Hazzard, so very few people cared. Well, so what did you think of the list? I'm pretty amazed, and I bet you guys didn't know all of those out there had animated or cartoon versions of themselves. Some are pretty unique, and one I did miss was Lost in Space. Lost in Space also had an animated incarnation as well, and I don't think I missed many others, if any at all. Do you happen to know any, or what was your favorite? Did you know all these? Let me know in the comments if you had no idea there were some of these cartoons. If you like this content, please remember to subscribe. Like the comment, share it amongst your friends. Help me get other subscribers, and appreciate the support. Until next time.